Thank you. So you're the only one I know who comes out with so many books, and all your books are like already pregnant with the next book. Like I don't know anybody else who does that. You have 7 books out. The latest one is Pandemia and Other Poems through Aslan Libre Press. But you also, just a couple of hours ago, were notified that your previous book, Jazz House, won the Award of Merit from the Philosophical Society of Texas for Best Book of Poetry by a Texas Author. Congrats. And I don't know how you do so much writing, incredibly prolific, but on top of that, you're the publisher for FlowerSong Press and its imprint, Juventud Press. Work like crazy, have a family, have dogs and love them, have a beautiful child. Give us your secret. But I'd
No,
like you to like just, tell us a little bit about everything that you're doing.
well, okay. I also have 2 cats. That might be the secret. But no, I have a supportive family. My wife, she sees that I'm working and thinks I'm crazy, but lets me do my thing. I'm a restaurant manager also, and I spend a lot of time in my little office here, and just when I'm not writing, I'm reading. When I'm not reading for myself, I'm reading manuscripts, and just I think I just live with the idea of life being short. Just because of the way I grew up in Los Angeles and in the projects, with the whole mindset of life is too short and you got to get as much done as possible. You don't never know when it's going to get cut, especially now. With the pandemic and stuff, you never know. So I've always worked that way and I've always lived that way. Got to live your life to the fullest because you just never know. So I'm trying to leave I guess a body of work. I'm also trying to leave something for my daughter, for her to a legacy, I guess, you could say. But then again, I have to find a way to kind of tone it down because I might be rushing myself to that grave, right, by not relaxing. I was just reading something that someone posted about Hashimoto's disease, because that's something that I have, and it's something to do with your thyroid. And they say that one of the most important things is to get enough sleep. And I'm like, that's not me. I go, maybe I need to look into that. But I just feel like there's always something to do, and when I'm not doing it, it's just time wasted. And when I waste time not doing anything, I just feel like I'm not doing justice to someone. So yeah, I just stay busy, and create. To me now, I started writing and doing things having to do with literature later, late in life, I guess in my 30s. And so I mean, I guess that's not that late, right? But yeah. um and I'm 47 now, but I feel like I'm trying to catch up, to what I could have been doing. I hear of people saying I started writing poetry when I was 6, when I was 8, um and all this, and I'm like, damn, but it's one of those things where I just feel like I want to give something back. And so
You've done that too in supporting, I think, writers who wouldn't have had the opportunity or wouldn't have had even um, I don't want to say the godness that like the publishing world is so large that it feels impossible, to get to. So I know that when you opened your arms to Mauricio's manuscript, you were already like, this is a brother, and I really appreciated when you did that. Can you share a few poems with us?
sure, yeah, of course. um I'll share a poem from Jazz House. This is from the collection that just won the book award, right? Let's see. Okay. I should have been ready, right? I'm never ready. This one is titled In Love With. In love with our house and the wood flooring, the creaking under my bare feet, and my walk over to the kitchen for a glass of water, all leading back to you. In love with the bending hiss of the cat and their hideout, the broom closet. Our cookbooks that opt out of my favorite dish, pupusas revueltas, and the motion in the king-size bed, all leading back to you. In love with her music choices, the sound of faint trumpet sounds, melancholic piano suicides that are given second chances, and our future flower beds, tree swing, winter storms, and child, all leading back to you. In love with gossip and the mystery behind the words, the truth behind the lies, and the cutting of ties and relief, all leading back to you. In love with colors, the way our bedroom becomes an ocean, and our living room becomes a cliff overlooking the city, and our windows let the light in, all leading back to you. So that's from Jazz House. And this one is from Pandemia and Other Poems. And this one I'm going to read, and it's a nod to Roque Dalton, who is a poet from El Salvador. And this one is titled If Roque Dalton Were My Father. 1. We would have discussions about the lake in the sky, the longing for pupusas de loroco as we sit and fight off the Texas heat drinking ensalada. I would be smoking, and he would be writing to El Salvador with his gray hands. Perhaps a poem, a song, a new anthem. If Roque Dalton were my father, he too would have left me, and all I would have left to remember him by would be gunpowder, books, and that lake in the sky. 2. I would be his love, not the kind of love he's proud of, but the kind of love he suffers for. 3. We would sit in silence. We would crave it together, the halt of things, the respect for nature's song, the listening for once, not voices, sounds, together, listening for the sound of pain, together, searching for the place where it is adhered to. No yelling, no screaming, no man made sounds, just our souls when walking, the crisp whispers of our clothes when we slip into them, the sighs of the dying, and what of the marimba playing as we swallow black oysters. 4. Why do you pant? Your face tumbling downward, sinking into the ashes, my heart. I would ask about the birds and the bees. How can anyone think of making love in this fire? Sun, everything burns, the streets, the walls, our nakedness, even the entrance to heaven. Sometimes we must not even look to the skies. Clouds want to go unseen when the bell tolls at noon. And we will sit in silence on the hillside watching the smoke, listening to the sirens and gunfire, eating manguitos, trembling. 5. We have both lost good friends, written their names in the sky, poured cold beer on hot asphalt in their memory. I sometimes whistle when I think of the dead.
This is strong. You always like cut right to it, no? Um, wow. I need that book. I haven't picked it up yet. Now you know because I need that poem. Lilia, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Resistencia and Red Salmon Arts. And I mean, the organization's been around over 30 years, working within indigenous communities, supporting creative artists of all kinds. I'd love to hear a little bit about, like in 2 minutes or less, all that Red Salmon Arts does and how you ended up choosing Mauricio's book.
Sure. Let's see if I can say it in 2 minutes or
Maybe,
less.
maybe a little more.
Ah, well, first, it's so great to see all these new faces, right? This is actually our first poetry reading that we've done um, during the pandemic. So it's really, really exciting for me to see all you all. So normally we'd be in our casita and I'd say, están en su casa, you are now in our home and you are now part of us. And hopefully we can collaborate. Pero ahora estamos en nuestras casas. So, so I guess we have a virtual casa. We have our own little casas we can make together. So Red Salmon Arts has been around in one form or another since the late, well, actually, um, since the late 80s, officially, right? And Resistencia has been around since 1981, which is pretty amazing. And the way I always explain it to people is Red Salmon Arts is our nonprofit, which is dedicated to Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, Latino, Latino, Latinx, indigenous centered cultural arts programming that celebrates the written word through literature and literacy. And Resistencia Books or bookstores, which most people are familiar with, is literally the house, right? This was the business side of it where we sell books, right? So most people know Resistencia, but they don't know Red Salmon. And they've always been interconnected. It was founded by Raul Salinas, who I think is always important to acknowledge because he, in the same capacity as you, Edward, and actually you, Joe, have been generous in making sure that it isn't just your words that see the life, pero the words of so many artistas, maybe artistas whose routes are not traditional. And that's one of our biggest mandates is how can our voices just continuously be amplified in ways that aren't expected, in ways that we don't have access to. And so that gives me a lot of joy to continue that work. And in terms of Mauricio and I met, actually the preface pretty much says it. A friend of ours introduced me to him. She said, look, I think this guy's gonna be a good volunteer for you all. And we're kind of undisciplined, unorthodox, and unruly. So I was like, well, I don't know, because most of our volunteers get really frustrated with us. But Mauricio was persistent, was calm, and kind. And so I knew Mauricio as someone I could count on to like say, hey, we're tabling here. Can you do these book sales? Or can you help with moving these books? Or when we were moving, I remember distinctly it was a day because we've had to move recently. You know, it was practically in tears. And he just shows up and he's like, can I help you? I was like, yes, you can. Because I didn't like all those other people helping me. They were really stressing me out. And he and I like took apart my office. So that's like the labor, right? Like we worked side by side. Pero Mauricio is this poeta. And I'm like, hey, so you write, right? So you have stuff, right? And he was like, yes. So in the pandemia, as we were refocusing our programming, he and I finally had either a conversation or probably a series of texts, because that's how we usually communicate, where it's like, hey, let's seriously talk about printing your work. Red Salmon Arts, through its imprint, Red Salmon Press, has been dedicated to doing the work of making sure to showcase writers who, once again, maybe their ruta to publishing has been different. And so from there, it was pretty easy peasy. It was just a question of me recognizing my own limitations, saying, well, I shouldn't edit it, and asking you, Joe, to say, would you go on this journey to see if we can get this work all put together and in a book form, and pretty much in less than a year, I think, when it all got said and done. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's good to hear how he was with you when he was volunteering because he was very much like that when we were going through the book too. I kept and as I edit, you know, you meet that kind of dark underside of folks, and I know I have it too, like of writers, because we're so invested in our writing. We're so in love with what we've managed to put on the page, which is difficult to do. That when somebody tells us, have consistency here, or this may need to be changed, or this isn't clear, some folks get upset. It happens, and then they get upset and then they go back to like, no, you're right. Or I see what you're talking about, but I want it this way. And it's like, okay. And it all is a conversation. Throughout, Mauricio was just like, oh yeah, I see that. Oh yeah. But he would be very clear, like, I'm not gonna change this one. But it wasn't with any ego at all. It was very much like, how can this work be the best that it can? And I really appreciated that about him overall. And you can see it for those who have the book, you can see it already, like how wonderful it is, for a young writer to be able to put it together, to be able to be very clear, to be very honest in the work. That's hard to find. So with that, Mauricio, let me read your bio, Papa. Mauricio Novoa was born and raised in Glenmont to Salvadoran refugees. He attended Gettysburg College, where he lived briefly after graduation. There he worked with middle and high school students in a migrant education after-school program, helped tutor in adult ESL classes, and volunteered at Casa de la Cultura programs. He received his master's degree from Queen's University of Charlotte. Memorias from the Beltway is his first full-length collection of poetry. His work has also been published in the Pettigrew Review, Acentos Review, Blue Mesa Review, Latino Book Review, and the anthology The Wandering Song, Central American Writing in the United States. He also has a work in the anthology The Breakbeat Poets, Volume 4, Latinx. He currently lives in Austin with his partner and pet tortoise and the dog, where he volunteers at Asistencia Books and the Barrio Writers Program in Pflugerville. Thanks for coming, Mauricio. Will you read for us?
All right. Thank you all for that introduction and for getting this all together. Thank you all for being here on a Friday night. Glad you all didn't have anything better to do than to hang out with me. But I appreciate the support, and just like a big thank you to Red Salmon Arts and FlowerSong, Lilia and Edward, for believing in this, because honestly, I think y'all believed in it more than I did, because I never thought this would happen. So you all made this dream that I had come true, and it's still weird holding this thing in my hand. And yeah, I couldn't have done it without y'all and without Joe editing and being super, because I don't know shit about anything. So you all were very helpful in showing me the ropes and showing me how everything goes. So yeah, I'm gonna get into it now. Start with how my Mr. Rogers neighborhood little things to show me where I'm going. So the first one I'm gonna read is the first poem in the book, Dandelion Graves, and it was actually the first piece I ever had published, in anything, I think. And that was in The Wandering Song. So that was a big moment for me. And yeah, this one has just kept reappearing and reappearing because different publications pick it up. So this is one of my personal favorites and a great way to start. And yeah, this one is also, I wrote it to, one of my favorite writing practices is writing to beats I really like. And the one I went with for this one is War by King Los. So that's why it has a little dedication under there. So Dandelion Graves. Kids of the forgotten refugees, soilless seeds, on the run from the barrel of a gun on their knees, ducking immigration until they're stationed as far as DC or LA or the Bay. That was back in Reagan's 80s, when numbers shot up like a fiend, crack rock being steamed in the apartment down the hallway from my mama's baby. But that wasn't the home that my parents made for me, Georgia Ave and Urbana and Lily White Montgomery. Except the Glenmont section was brown as abuela's coffee, and the smell of asphalt would never wash off papi. A good day was a meal that wasn't frijoles and cheese, So my dreams are drenched in leftover Chinese. But pull yourself and you'll succeed is the bullshit they would feed. So everyone drank piss until they couldn't see. Cause how's a kid like me supposed to think when it's engraved? The only future that awaits is a dandelion grave. I'm gonna have to take a sip of water after every poem because I don't talk much. So this is a lot of talking for me and it takes a lot. So I have to rehydrate. All right. So this next one is called Birthday Party in the Orchards. And it's based off of a photograph taken by Jorge Perez Rico. The boy takes a break from playing with all his little amigos and primos so the photographer can freeze the first day of his 6th year. To cope with the high demands of his celebrity, he rewards himself with the juice pouch, sweating with the remains of the ice cubes that held it before the boy made it his co-star for the still. Some of the juice drips down to his jorts, but they'll dry once he goes back to running around in his chanclas in the apple orchard his parents worked under the Adams County sun from tree to tree, reaching for every ripe Macintosh and Red Delicious to fill their buckets because their wages are measured in bushels. All those apples sit watching the party they paid for, shaded in their crates as the guests sweat from the games of tag and the boys' parents sweat from the tinga steaming from the silver olla sweating orange. They watch everyone enjoy the free afternoon before they clock into their outdoor office, 100 paces from their beds. This next one I wrote just sort of as an ode to my childhood friends. Growing up in the DMV, it was just, I wanted a way to celebrate them and the friendship I had with them, because it did help me get through a lot of like personal things that I'm sure they didn't even know were going on, but just wanted to show my appreciation for their friendship. And it's called Happy Meals. Humble pie comes in McDonald's boxes in apple and pumpkin, but luxury is Oreo McFlurries on payday. Checks alternating by homie. Me one Friday, Zach another, Moira a Monday, Brandon the next. Mommy ain't home till 7, but I get hungry by 3, and my last meal was the night before, so Daniel's $5 is split 5 ways, with me, JC, Miles, and Ishmael on a mission for McChickens, splitting Ishmael's back seat, skinniest one with the seatbelt. After we hoop in the park, post-game stretches are turning quarters into 4-person meals, Taco Bell burritos, dank as Zach's bowl perfume Puente's Mini Coupe with grade D beef perfume, as we're rolling through Maryland's richest county, wondering who will have the 5 for tomorrow's dinner. This next one I wrote kind of describing the day my dad dropped me off at Gettysburg College that first day, and it's called First Day of School. In his asphalt cologne, Papi hugged me goodbye, his words exhausted like choking smoke as he looked for a bathroom to let his eyes flow out like he did on rent days. And now this next one I wrote for my mom. And yeah, there's like not really enough I can say about my mom. So hopefully this poem captures it after I take my little sippy. Like, calluses. Mommy's feet were a Ruller Road elementary census, each callus a Spanish-speaking teacher. Because she cleaned hotel rooms, I almost switched into an ESOL class, even though she had Mr. Rogers tutor me to English fluency. We got a mirror in our bathroom when she got more than Univision to watch at 7 p.m. Home from work, eating at the table by herself. 4 boys sleeping in the same bed, but meals in whatever hole they found or made. Some nights I rubbed her feet after pulling out her canas, her soles blistered with every country she left behind. Each quarter she got as a raise for promotions, each vacation and conference she tidied up without a tip. When she accidentally hit the remote and it switched to the English channels, the characters only said hola when they were scrubbing a toilet. That might explain why she always fell asleep halfway through a movie, and why 6 weekend tequilas were what made her dance then pull me in, dragging my brick feet to cumbia, and why whatever school loans didn't cover went on her credit card. I got my first callus on my left toe when I started working with Spanish-speaking students, one for every teacher they might have had that talked like us, one for every dirty mirror I stood in front of as I shaved, one for every stomach pump after drinking like a grown-ass, hard-working for worthless pennies woman that made mommy the first thing I saw when I woke up and had to work that Monday. But because of the 12 she had put on my ass for being a baboso, I may never get another. This next one is called Can Afford a Triole. And for those of you who might not know, a triole is a form that is 8 lines long. Had to write it down because I completely forgot what it was. It's 8 lines long, 8 syllables each line. And the rhyme pattern is A, B, A, B, A, B. So just the first line rhymes with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 7th line. And then the second line rhymes with the other ones. And then the first line comes back as the 4th line and the 7th line, and then the second line comes back as the 8th. So it's a lot of repetition and rhyming. So it was a little hard for a little short poem. So hopefully it came out all right. Can afford a triole. Roaches cover my sheets and frijoles. Is all we have filled with holes and expired last week. Roaches cover my sheets as I try not to write about concrete after burning blunts to the clip till I gag. Now roaches cover my sheets and frijoles is all we have. The next one is the title poem. So this one is, I don't usually do long poems. This is kind of like one of like maybe 2 or 3 that are in the whole book, just because I usually run out of stuff to say by that point. But one of the thing I really wanted to do this one was write something I could ground like a future work in, and also write, like if I had to have one poem that sort of captured everything I was ever talking about, I wanted this one to be it. And it went through multiple name changes, multiple revisions and stuff. But I think I did end up capturing like growing up in the DMV with like family, friends, and everything that I wanted in this poem. So yeah, Memorias from the Beltway. 1. The bullet entered Romero's chest at mass. A week later, heaven repaid with a plague of rifle rounds through bomb smoke at his funeral. Papi was 13, old enough to hold a rifle like his friends who brought AKs to the birthday parties because military uniforms made skin bulletproof. He watched friends open friends' veins on schoolyard playgrounds and hid from tanks taking his class's roll call. While Abuela sang hymns, he wrote love poems to prove hearts with bullet holes can still beat. Abuelo bounced first from San Salvador to the district, almost a decade after hope for the hungry bled onto bread. After BPD release stopped the violence, Abuelo sent for Abuela and Papi, whose first DC job was at a gas station. A week later, he learned guns have siblings, a similar cold on the back of his neck as the register was emptied. 2. From their county stamp cruiser, eyes like street lamps surveil every movement down Urbana Drive and Flack Street with a bullet for anything they can't see. And like the street craters under their wheels, the grass in between them and my house depresses with new suspects, new shivers from cold cuffs, new questions for walking away alive. There's even a cavity in the grass from all the Yankee-fitted brims pummeled for whatever invented offense, barely missing my sidewalk. 3. But sometimes life is carne asada, drunk uncles, and soccer balls soaring over fences into neighbors' yards who don't give a fuck how many times we have to hop to get them back. They say que tal too. That's vecino for play that shit all night if you want. No noise complaints here. 4. Watch maps fly farther than our dreams. Watch children try to find El Salvador between red line stations on metro directories. Watch fathers and mothers escape borders, but their children never leave the Beltway. Now watch their older cousins, in Yankee fitted caps, a 24 Laker jersey, and a Cowboys case on their phones with a messy background, take us to New York, Detroit, Compton, and watch us take notebooks and try to bring them back to the Beltway. 5. Squad cars roll slow, heavy like tanks, leaving imprints on our sense of safety. You would think the 13-year-old sitting in the back seat had brought a rifle and aimed it at someone's chest. But no, he set off a stink bomb. No one died that day, though some who watched him in cuffs will years later, but at least 64 bullets in 4 sidearms stop our hearts and beg to open them, rattling the clip, staring longingly up the barrel, praying to leave brim imprints in front of this middle school. And we stare with tunnel vision past the flashing lights at the street lamp, praying we pass under in an hour heading home. Notebooks without bullet holes. 6. We hit the courts with 3 hours of sun left because we wanted to go home with our shoes. Just as Scrub League was set to commence, 2 guys asked to play. We didn't want to embarrass ourselves, but we said yes anyways. We made sure to split them up in case they were any good. Who remembers how anyone played? But we shot through time quick enough. One of the 2 said he just got home the week before. It didn't matter how long he was gone, or why. No one gave him a scholarship to ball anywhere, and they made sure no one ever would, even if he could or couldn't dunk on us every play, even if his GPA was higher than our points per game. Most of us never leave, but teammates stolen from us outnumber our hundreds of missed shots. We never got a rematch. 8. Saturday nights, we're sitting in the corner of a room in Beltsville as 15 cousins play Mario Kart, writing to Tupac and game beats, playing over the chorus of Theos and Thea's shit talk in the living room. The papers pass around because they want to follow up from last week's freestyle number 3. Summer breezes were sleeping over at the Virginia cousin's house because knowing that waking up the next morning is watching G-Unit videos on his family computer and showing him a notebook full of Nas impressions. A normal day is a cold basement, Boppy gone for days plowing snow for sub-zero paychecks after presents, mommy on the metro next to the white people whose $230 a night toilet she just cleaned, me looking at rejection notices feeling like Kanye, like damn, is everyone else that much better than me? 8. Kevin Durant was drafted in 2007 by the Oklahoma City Thunder because he practices jumper since he was little, with coaches correcting his mistakes, watching Jordan and Iverson on TV. So what if instead of reading Lord of the Flies and Robert Frost every year, someone assigned Sonia Sanchez? If someone showed me how to paint an empty fridge with words instead of the multiple fonts F's come in, would I still be waiting for a rookie contract? 9. I'm not supposed to take it personal, but it feels like my pockets were stolen just as I thought I was about to fill them. Was all this practice just bench pressing with no weights, like Pop's getting ahead in America? We were counterfeiting meal tickets in our high school hallways. I got cocky enough to think I could forge a plane ticket out of rhymes and hope boiled from lotto scratch-off dust. My ass still covered in the gravel from mommy's stoop. Hanging hip-hop posters was like screwing in a small light bulb in a dark auditorium. Rhapsody's voice, the sound you follow to find the light switch. I still chug a beer from the bottle, craving a sip of the milk rent bills drank up, still trying to stop reading no as quit, still standing on Pac's shoulders trying to get hang time like Jordan instead of an Earl Manigault rebound, because we're born with loaded rifles into echo chambers where everyone yells shoot and the music jams the gun. And this last one is another Dandelion poem. Dandelions make a few appearances in the book just because, one, I grew up around them all the time. They're the only flowers I knew the names for. And 2, it just worked as a metaphor for so many things on so many levels that it just reappeared. It sprouted in every corner of the book, if you will. So this one's called Dandelion Bouquet, which is also another poem for my mom. When I was little and wanted to show mommy I loved her, I picked her flowers. The bright, pretty yellow ones that seemed to grow everywhere, in gardens, on the lawn, between cracks in the sidewalk and cracks in between beer bottles. They shone to me even in storms that brought trees down to earth. They came back every time they were cut, so I could always find them when they were needed, though it was sad that they always died the day I gave them to her. But she never threw them away. She kept them next to the sink. She made tortillas and pancakes until I brought more. How long that was depended on how long it took to come down from my room, from where I kicked out my brothers and sat alone crying for reasons I didn't even know. For however long that was, I knew I could come down eventually, and there she was, waiting for more flowers. Thank you.
I love seeing all the clapping. That's beautiful. Again, like you hear it almost. I have one request because when I first got your manuscript, I liked it, but I was so caught by this one poem. Like I gotta do this just for this one poem. So would you read Wu Tang is for the children? It's short.
Gladly. Let me find it.
25.
Page 25.
Thank you.
We all have it bookmarked.
All right, Wu-Tang is for the children. And that one, since you can't see the footnote, is a quote from Old Dirty Bastard that he gave, I think, at the Grammys for an acceptance speech. And this is also a full poem. It's called the Sijo. It's a 3-line poem. I don't remember the rest of the words. I didn't prepare to talk about what that was. So you might want to Google that. Wu-Tang is for the children, or in defense of teaching hip hop in school and removing the parental advisory sticker, a Sijo. Would you debate the possible side effects of the medicine in an EpiPen or the physical harm of CPR as your kid's lungs collapse in their quick, chilling chest?
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. That was a lot. That was beautiful. The suite of poems for Memorias from Beltway, amazing. I think it's worth buying the book for all the work, but to see how each section of that long piece sits on the page, they're all really distinct. I thought you were going to sing and you didn't, but a rap. And
Hell
okay,
no.
next time we'll do another reading where you get to just rap.
Was not about embarrassing myself on my first.
Edward and I would tell you it's all about embarrassment. You just got to get out there, but it'll come.
Maybe if I get
I've
too big,
had,
but I don't see that happening.
I've known poets
It's
long enough
about
that they
it.
start with like, I'm never gonna sing, and then 10 years later they're like singing.
It all depends on what's in the cup he's drinking.
I'm not telling.
It's clear. That's all we know. It's clear. So I had 2 questions, but as you were reading, I want to alter one of my questions. So I want to ask both of you because you're both salvadoreño. You're both, well, you're first generation, Mauricio. No, I don't. Edward, are you first generation? Also salvadoreño.
Yeah.
That's so. So, what role does language play within your work? But I also want to just say, because for both of you too, what role does music as a language play in your work?
Oh, me first?
Mauricio?
Okay. Yeah, so I do a lot of like the English and Spanish stuff, but not the Spanish is kind of like sprinkled in because my Spanish is trash. But most of it that I picked up was having to translate for my grandma at like the pharmacy, at the doctors and stuff like that. So whatever I picked up is like being forced to learn it, basically. But growing up where I did, like I just grew up around so many different types of people, like, or most of them like were first generation people from like all over, like a lot of my friends like first generation like Ethiopian, first generation like Vietnamese, a lot of Salvadoreños and like Central Americans in general. But I don't know too many of us like spoke our home languages that much. or at best it was like enough to translate like for our parents. So I think that kind of like in and out comes out a lot of my stuff. But yeah, I mean, I first got into writing because in seventh grade, like I wanted to be a rapper, so I was like writing raps, and that's kind of how like it evolved to poetry and all that. But that, even though I don't do that, that's kind of like where my stuff is like most comfortable, because like that, those are my teachers. Like I grew up like learning from, like I'm basically like just copying like Tupac's complete style. Like I'm just like trying to copy all his like word wise, like be him. But that was like, that's who I like learned from. So that's like where I feel most at home writing, and I think that's what comes out. Um, and I could also just be bullshitting in it, just be like, coming out to, but that's where I think I feel it sits.
Thanks. Edward, I know you work a lot within a jazz aesthetic.
I do, but music plays like another sense when it comes to writing for me. Like when you get a certain aroma that reminds you of something, sometimes burning mesquite reminds me of, summers in El Salvador, like a burning wood or something. It'll remind me, or like, the petrichor, when the rain hits the hot earth for the first time, it reminds me of, of 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 a time and place when I was a kid. And so music does that for me today, especially because of Mauricio's reading, and then because of me winning the book award. I'm like, man, it's a great day to be a Salvadoreño, a literary guy from Centro America. It's time to celebrate. So I was listening to music from El Salvador. I went into my Spotify, and I was like the old school stuff my mom would listen to, like Los Vikings and all these old school ones that I remember her listening to. And it just brought back so many memories. I even called an uncle of mine that lives in Santana, and it just got into this whole, you know, um, feel, you know, of I even wanted to go eat pupusas today. I was like, I went to the meat market looking for the local meat market looking for cola champan. I mean, I was just like really into the whole thing. I mean, it was just nuts. But music does, it plays a huge part. Yes, I love the jazz, and I grew up with gangster rap, but I grew up also with, a lot of my mom's music and my grandmother's music, and I also grew up with a lot of the music that my neighbors played. So it was a melting pot where I grew up. I had the neighbors that were Mexicanos, and then my mother and my uncles were Salvadoreños, and my tias. And so we listened to cumbias and marimba and salsa and all that stuff. So the music in my life is just like, it's an explosion of a lot of things, and I'm so lucky that I was able to grasp it all and not throw any of it away. I did fall in love with my own music growing up, and was able to attach myself to what me and my friends enjoyed and could relate to, but never said, nah, I don't like this, the stuff that my mom enjoyed. Now I appreciate it more. And so I think it works well with the poetry, especially like when you're thinking of writing things that are of nature, or writing things that are softer and more tender. Those ballads are the ones that help more than if I were to listen to, Ice Cube or something like Tupac or Biggie. That's gonna put, those things help me write things that are more in the activist form than things that are more tender, I think. So it's just mood filling for me.
Thank you for
If
that.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that there is no greater truth than like a Latina singer telling it, telling how life is or how relationship is going, in a balada. So
Right.
Yeah, because there's no in between at that moment. Um, although I do think that Biggie also had his moments of truth. So I had another question, and if anybody else has questions, I just saw another one pop up. We'll answer them for sure. Thank you guys. So, but if you have a question, go ahead and post it. But my other question is, I'm going the long way here. So we know Trump is gone. He's not totally forgotten. He's the things that he's done, in his policy work will affect um, migrants for generations. Really, I mean, we're talking about families separated, and that trauma will affect DNA in our, in our lives to come, right? But he throughout, like he equated the term Mexican, and I say the term because everybody who was coming in was deemed Mexican. I think that's an American idea too, right? It's very simple. And so, even though there's a rich history of Central American writers, I think the country is still learning who they really are. So, could you guys speak a little bit to some of the Central American and particularly Salvadoran writers that you are reading or that you like? Roque Dalton, of course, is the one that all poets go to because poetry, like bread,
Mhm.
is on everyone's tongue. But are there any others, or are there other writers that you connect with who influence your work? That's for both of you.
I'm actually I actually look for them, and I was talking to Mauricio that I'm publishing a 19-year-old. He's probably going to be 20. His name is Javier Fuentes Vargas, and he's from the town where my mother was born, from Santa Ana, El Salvador, and uh, we're publishing his book Bajo. Um, it's a Spanish written collection of poetry, which we also got translated into English. And I mean, he's got powerful stuff. It's just very, I mean, the work that comes out of Latin America is totally different from the work that comes from here, because it's just a pure culture of it's not a mix. The influences aren't of all the different cultures around them, but only of his set culture of El Salvador. So it's just like 100% from his area and in his surroundings. So I'm reading what he's writing, and I'm reading the people that he's reading, that are from his area as well. So I don't know specific names, because I'm reading like one poem here, one poem there from different writers. So but there's a lot of them, and it's exciting, and I'm loving it. And it's just it's amazing, because I remember when I just started reading poetry, and I knew of maybe one or two poets of color before I really, really, opened my eyes to it. But now I'm really digging for voices. I I'm excited. And again, I'm going back to the whole thing. There's not enough time, to get things done. And it scares me to know that I'm gonna be gone before everyone is you know I guess discovered. So that's why I believe a lot in anthologies as well, because it also makes room for capturing many voices, and not just one collection of one certain person, but maybe one collection can get 20, 30 individuals in one piece, and then maybe someone else can find that one person, and find a collection out of that. So yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, I'm excited, you know.
Mauricio, who do you go to? Who do you like to?
Um, so currently, like just some of the people that come to mind, Janelle Pineda, whose book is coming out soon. Her stuff is really good. Um, Reading Javier Zamora's book, because that was like the first time I saw like
Yeah.
a Central American writer's like book before. So that was a big moment. Before that, Quique Aviles, who's a DC poet, who I don't think he has a book. He might, but I haven't like read it, but I've read like some of his stuff. But like other than that, like, but though they're so new that I'm still like kind of digesting, because I didn't like for me, like the end all be all has always been like hip hop for me, because that's just like, that was like the art form that did everything that I wanted art to do. Like it spoke to every emotion that I was feeling and could think of, and to every like situation that like so that was like I went with that was just like it, like that was like nothing else. And then like I didn't really like latch on to my parents like Spanish music until a lot later in life, but even then like I was like the stuff of theirs I did like was like Stevie Wonder, Roberta Flack, like, so like I owe most like pretty much all my like anything I learned to like Black artists that I grew up listening to. So that's like where like all my influence. But as far as like Central American writers coming out now, it's like for me it's brand new, because I didn't know like it existed. So this is all stuff I'm learning now.
And you've been in 2 really good anthologies that I think those are starting points for people who are, yeah. So there's a question for you, Mauricio, from Benjamin. It says, thanks, Mauricio. I love the roots of this book. Where do you feel your work growing now as your life and experiences also grow?
What's up, Ben? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. Writing new stuff is kind of hard, but I need to see where I've written a lot of stuff since I've been in Austin that I haven't been ready to release for different reasons I won't say, but I don't, things come out as like I feel strongly about things, but lately it's been hard to like put that onto words. So I think like as far as the work growing, I think I have no clue. But it'll be interesting to see. And I get a lot from like other people too, like in conversation with different people, like not just artists, but just like people I meet, like new friends I make and stuff. And just taking all that in, and stuff just kind of sprouts from that. So yeah, it all just kind of happens as it goes along. And yeah, I don't really have a plan or anything, but it'll be cool to see.
It can be difficult to, and most writers will tell you this, like it can be difficult to promote or do, all the kind of work of writing versus the actual sitting down to write, because it's a different mind almost. So you may be a little flustered because, right, you're in promotion mode and you're getting your book out and it's just gotten in your hands and you've been mailing copies and copies out. So I can see where it's difficult to to still your mind a little bit and remember what kind of fired you up, you know? No harm, no harm. It'll come. The
Right
writing
now,
always comes.
I'm just trying not to fuck up what I already started. So
I think you're okay. So we have we have a question for Edward from Alan. Would you describe the impact of growing up in Boyle Heights on your life and poetry? And have you been following the gentrification battles?
Yeah, I went to Boyle Heights a couple years ago to visit my mom, and it's I was able to walk through neighborhoods that I would have never walked to when I grew up there, because I would have been afraid of getting shot. But gentrification, I guess, allowed for that. A lot of cleanup. I guess you could say they moved people out. Um, and I know it hurt the community in many ways, but I know it helped the community in many ways, where it allowed for it to look better, I guess you could say. But I know that a lot of people were displaced, and I don't know where they went. And unfortunately, it also caused a lot of problem with homelessness, and a lot of people are just put out. So I just don't think the way they did it was probably the right way to do it, because they just didn't have an answer for it. They just pretty much said, you got to go. We're going to move you out. There's just not programs in place to help. Growing up, I know that my mother had to have several jobs, and we hardly ever saw her when we were young, because she had to work, and totaling up the hours that she worked and the jobs that she worked didn't total up a living wage. So it was very difficult for us. So we grew up fast. We learned how to do a lot of things on our own as children. And so how that affected my life, well, we learned to be self-sufficient. We were latchkey kids. um, a lot of our friends had to live the same life, but I don't think the support was there for some of them, and so some of them fell through crime and drugs and violence, suicide, incarceration, murder, death, gangs. So some of us were lucky. I could consider myself one of the lucky ones. Not everybody was so lucky. Um, and so the poetry didn't come till later in my life. I would say maybe about when I was in my 30s. And so but poetry was I think brewing, because everything that I write now is from the experiences of growing up. It just came back. It comes back in my writing. So I think it was brewing. And like Mauricio, I owe it to uh, Black artists. Actually, I didn't learn about literature through people of my color. I actually learned how to read by reading books by Richard Wright and Claude Brown, and books like that, until I found Luis Rodriguez, and then Neruda and Lorca, and then came later. But I latched on to the reading of Langston Hughes, and those, and was able to relate to uh, to their um, you know struggles. Because of the struggles, they were kind of similar, because of the different types of growing up in the ghettos and stuff like that, for some of the writers. So I just translated that life into poetry. But again, I owe it to music as well. I've always loved songwriters, Smokey Robinson. Anyone who wrote their own music to me was a hero. And sang it, I thought was special. So I always latched on to wordsmiths, and I didn't understand until I became a poet that I latched on to that type of person or artist. And so I think without knowing, I was, I guess, being molded to become a writer through those venues, by latching on to the wordsmiths and the writers and stuff like that. But yeah, I
Well,
hope I
and
answered your
again,
question.
you aren't waiting either. You started late, as you said, but you have 7 books, so you're not wasting time. So, there is a question. Let me see for. Oh, there's more questions. Thank you guys. So from Jose, he's saying, Mauricio, you're among the first crop of brown Salvadoran Americans documenting their own truths and own lived experiences in the DMV. What do you hope young Salvadoran Americans and their diverse neighbors take away from your written testimonies?
All right, Jose. First off, I'm paler than a motherfucker. I don't know what. But let me make sure. I'm just like rereading it to make sure I don't like skip over anything. What I hope they take away. Um,
question rather.
I think when I like put this book together, it was definitely, I was in the headspace of like writing for, I don't want to say myself because that's like only partially true. I write for me, but also like I write so that people read it, because if it was just for me, I would have never sent it out. But it was for like thinking about kids like me when I was like in that 7th grade, 8th grade time, when I didn't really have like, when before like I found hip hop, like when I didn't really have anything to latch onto, which is part of the reason why the cover worked out so well that my brother drew, like just based on like a really young picture of us, because that's kind of like the headspace I was in, who I wanted to like encapsulate here. So I think it's just, I wanted to make that space where they're at, and like just give them something where they could see just a little piece of themselves in there. And yeah, I mean, I had like obviously everyone has their like audiences in mind when they write stuff, but hopefully like other people pick it up as well besides your just intended audience. And I think if you sit with it and read it, you'll find something there that you can connect to. And my hope is just that there's like something there for whoever needs it. Yeah, just like, because I needed it at one point and I wasn't finding it. So that was like my biggest hope for that.
I can't say as a first generation on my mother's side, she's Cuban American, that I connected with your work. You know, and I think Jose speaks about that, about these other kind of communities that are surrounding. So your work was a good reminder um, for what it is to slowly adjust or not adjust, and how those spaces don't fit, you know, with where you come from versus what this country is and does to us, you know. Brenda had, we'll do 2 more questions, but Brenda had a question around that. I think it was Brenda. No, I'm sorry. Christine. So she says she's, and this is for both of you, she's really intrigued in how you engage memory in different forms with tenderness throughout your collection. What is the function of memory in your work? She speaks specifically to, since pop culture and academia tend to reproduce a voyeuristic view of graphic moments of violence and people's trauma from the Salvadoran Civil War.
I guess I'll go first.
I think that question's for Mauricio. It says a question for Mauricio.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's always just easier for me to write about stuff that I remember, and hopefully remember more or less correctly, however close to that. But I don't know, I wasn't ever familiar with other people's writing about like the Salvadoran Civil War or anything like that until recently, and seeing like the ways people talk about it. I didn't want to do that and just reproduce like trauma porn for people, but I did want to like, I think one of the most surprising things I learned about my dad was that he wrote poems when he was younger, but he lost a lot of them. So just taking things that my parents and grandparents told me and like putting it in something that won't get lost was a big thing for me, and things that I like live through also, and like keeping them like in something that won't get lost. Because like, well, not only do we forget things, but like things that we have down will get lost if they're not reproduced in something, and something like this like kind of keeps all that there. So there's something where like they weren't just like talking to me and it like went in one ear and out the other, like it stuck in it, and I was able to like put it here, and try to capture like at least some of the feeling that they had when they would talk about it, not so much speak for them, but try and like hold as much of what they told me as I could there.
Thank you. Let me see. I want to do one more question. So Michael Reyes asks, "Thank you for sharing your work, Mauricio." Cat has to come in. Do you consider rap lyrics to be poetry? Do you consider rap lyricism to be a very different art form? What are the through lines and divergences you've observed as a hip hop head?
Yeah, and I think I could answer his and Brenda's question at the same time because they're kind of connected.
Okay.
That way no one gets left out. But I mean, rap is just a different form of poetry. Like it's not, there's no difference. Like it's just like same way that there's like different forms, spoken word, like it's all the same thing, just called something else. Anything different than that just seems like you're trying to diminish what it is. Rap is rhythm and poetry. Just like you rap it, like it's not, yeah, it's not different. And as far as like people I listen to, like a lot of newer people that I listen to that influence me, Rhapsody is a big one. She's amazing. Kendrick Lamar is a big one. Nitty Scott is huge too. Like I listen to so much. I think like the last thing I listened to was the Benny the Butcher album. So when I'm feeling super hardcore, go to those boys in Griselda from Buffalo. But it's a big, I mean, just with like streaming and stuff, there's so much stuff and I'm just like trying to keep up and I can't. So I try to hold on to the things that sound good to me. And just with Tupac, like I think the biggest thing from, I want to say the Me Against the World album was like one of the biggest like influences I had. Just like Dear Mama is like probably like the song for me. Like the like goal like the ghost I'm chasing, like that I'm trying to like catch up to. Just like those like first early albums where like things were super political. Like that was like my first like political education, and like the interviews he did.
Based on
Yeah.
music, not
Yeah. And I don't know if I've done like a poem based on a Tupac song, probably because I was afraid to, because I don't want to mess that up. But yeah, I mean, he was like, and he has his book of poems that were published too after, like a while after his death, and that was like the first. I think like a 7th grade teacher like showed us that in a class, and then I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is like I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. Like at that point, I had no ambition. Like I had no hope for anything with my life. Like I was gonna either like work or be dead or something. But then I read that and I was like, okay, life opened up. And yeah.
Oh, I'm glad we get to benefit actually that you had that connection.
And Pocket Snoop in the background, like Brenda pointed out, always watching.
So we're closing. If there are any last words, Edward, Mauricio, Lilia, that you'd like to share?
Just if you don't have Mauricio's book, get it from him. He signs them. Sweet. And check him out. Check him out. He's got some really good stuff. I'm happy I was able to hear you read what I've already read, but listening to it makes it all better. And I'm happy you're part of FlowerSong Press and Red Salmon Press, and we work together. And I can't wait to see more of you, and keep it going. Congratulations.
Agreed. Buy Mauricio's book if you haven't bought it. Buy books from the authors. I am going on my little rant. Do not go to Amazon. Amazon does not need your money. They will not help you ever. Buy them from the authors, buy them from FlowerSong, buy them from anyone else. There are choices, and we can have another conversation about that. But always buy, if you can, from the authors or from the imprints that put them out, because we can directly tell you where this money is going to go. It's really not that complicated for us. And it makes a world of difference, sometimes more than you realize. It literally will help us put the lights on. And I think sometimes that isn't said enough. With that little announcement, I also just want to say, Mauricio, felicidades. I am over the moon about this, en serio. And everyone else, Joe, Edward, and you all here, man. Who knew that we could have? I think at some point we had 40 people, counting all of us. And that's you, Mauricio. You've been letting people know this was going to happen. And you're right. If this is how you party, maybe you have a side gig as a promoter that we don't even know about, and we have to have a separate conversation about that for Red Salmon. Pero yeah, gracias a todos ustedes. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you all for the support. This is the most positive feedback I ever gotten. I don't know what to do with it. But yeah, I also have bookmarks and stickers, $1 each too, if you all want one. If you get stickers, post them around town. If you see the book at a big bookstore, steal it. Yeah. Thank you all for being here again. I can't thank you all enough for sharing the work. All the like notes and stuff I've gotten have been really, really like touching, and I don't even know what to say because this is all brand new for me, and I just hope you all keep enjoying the book and hopefully read other people that come out just like it.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for spending your Friday night with us. Now we're all kind of coasting in that beautiful poetry cloud, right? It's the endorphins. Thank you and have a good night. Don't forget to follow Edward and Mauricio and Red Salmon and FlowerSong.
Thank you, everybody.
Hang on for a second.